Okay, so we are on chapter 63, just on the last page of that chapter, looking at the question, how is one to be free from this I sense? Right? How is one to be free from this I sense? I had a
Mm.
wonderful, um, I don't think it was it was a spiritual experience, but not in the sense of a magical one. But I was on the plane coming back, and we hit some real turbulence. I was doing my japa before any of it happened, and I was just kind of having a nice meditation, kind of quietly sitting there trying to stay awake. And suddenly the plane just came into this real turbulence. I mean, just kind of real shaking the plane around. And for the first time ever, I had the real sense that I wasn't moving. That like the whole frame of reference was moving through me, but I was sitting still. And I felt such a calmness over it because I just had this distinct feeling that I was watching this, but that I wasn't a part of it. It just kind of caught me in that space, and it was a very encouraging place to be. And what I kind of realized is that that space of now, the power of now, is, and I use the word narratives. You've heard me use them a lot, and now I'm going to be using them even more because I realized that really. Uh, the narratives are what keep us attached and what keep us trapped in our body mind, in our attachment to our body mind. And there's just a constant flow of impetuses for a narrative that keep us moving or keep us involved in the second. And I mean, in everything comes as a narrative, like all of the sensations of your senses as they come in. Hey, good morning, Sevilla. Neri, that all of the stuff coming in through the senses uh, is trying to ignite one of your narratives. A memory of something, a feeling of something, and whatnot. And if you can see the narrative, I mean, if you just sit there and watch for a moment in anything that isn't emptiness, anything that isn't silence, watch it and see how it is a narrative. See how it has a little bit of a story attached to it that it's trying to pull you into. If you catch that first layer of narrative, then there's like 10 more that kind of explode out of it behind it. And I watched this movie on the plane called Badlands, and it was a science fiction movie, and they were on some planet, and they had this flower that if you got too close to it, the stem and the flower would kind of expand like a puffer fish, and there were all these big poison spikes that would stick out, and if you didn't back off, the plant would blow up, and all those spikes would shoot out like bullets. And I started seeing that how mind is kind of like that. That if you don't stay really close to the edge of mind, meaning that you only get like one narrative deep into your thinking, that sounds really crazy. But when you that's the point of mantra. Mantra is like a one level deep narrative, one level attached to mind, but only one level away from just quietness, from freedom. And so you keep your mind at the edge of consciousness by not stepping into the what would you call it? Not stepping through the portal
Oh,
into mind, and identifying fully with mind. And so yeah, all day yesterday I was really really practicing hard because I had a free day because it was a Wednesday, and I had just gotten back from Switzerland, so I didn't have any appointments or anything, and so I spent the day being quite quiet, and was trying really hard to maintain a mind that hadn't engaged and stayed as the observer and didn't get caught more than one layer deep in the narrative. And it took a great deal of effort, and I managed to stay, somewhere above board. But what I learned more than anything was the number of assaults that we get every moment to try and bring us into engagement, to try and bring us into mind. I was startled by that. I was like, oh my gosh, if it's literally like somebody is machine gunning distraction at us constantly all day long. And the effort to keep the mind clear of that and not to start weaving through the narratives and just getting involved in a plan and a plan, thinking about what you're going to do, what needs to be done, and how to do it, and blah blah blah, was really quite exhausting, I had to say. And so, probably about 2/3 of the way through the day, I kind of relaxed back into my deluded self. Highly educated, though, about the effort necessary if the mind is not pure yet. If the mind can't be held, and it's difficult to hold that silent space in there. Boy, there's a lot of work to do to get that mind cleared up to that point. You know? And so this has a lot to do with that. The I sense. Where does this I come from? So Maharaj says, you must deal with the I sense if you want to be free of it. Watch it in operation and at peace, how it starts and when it ceases, what it wants and how it gets it, until you see clearly and understand fully. Right? And to see clearly is to have that silence. To understand fully is to mean that you know the nature of this attachment to mind and how it produces the sense of I, because mind deals in particulars. And when you develop an ego sense of being, your I, you use it by collecting these narratives around a non-existent center in the mind, and we're in the center of that world, like the eye of a hurricane. Interesting. What is the eye of a hurricane? It's an absence of hurricane, right? There's nothing there. It's nice and still. The storm has stopped. It's surrounded by storm. And that sense of I is kind of like that. You're sort of in this whirling mind of constant change, but as long as you stay in the center, you're not pulled in, right? You're not pulled into it. And so he's saying, you must deal with this sense of I. You have to become familiar with it if you want to be free of it, because you have to learn how you're pulled into it, how you're fooled into engaging with interests that have nothing to do with you, right? And so he says, watch it in operation. So this is our practice of being the witness. Watch how the mind engages with the body. Watch how the two of them kind of lob things back and forth to each other. And watch how you as the watcher are sitting there constantly waiting for something interesting to attach to, something that you think involves you or one of your interests. And then you attach to it and you're running. He says, watch it in operation and at peace, right? So when you're watching a desire happen, when you're suddenly really wanting or jonesing after something, try and take it and backtrack it and see, where did that come from? What was it that made me want an egg sandwich for lunch? How is it that my body made a particular expectation in a non-existent space, the future, for me to get wrapped up in, right? So watch it in operation and at peace, how it starts, right? So sit there and try for a moment, like even if you do it right now, try for a moment to be quiet. And when you realize you're not being quiet, see if you can see, where did that start? What thought or what arrangement caused me to attach to it, to follow it into mind, right? So it's all this observation, and I invite you to really get serious about your inner observation. I've been working on that since I started doing that study of where mind is and what it is in my inner world, how I experience it in inner world, and body. Going in and trying to study, how do I sense the body? How does it communicate with me? How does it communicate with the mind? Right? All of that. And I started doing that, I don't know, I guess about 6 or 8 months ago. I'm terrible at time, but in my spiritual life, I have to say, I can't really say where I am. Whoever knows where we are, but we're going forward for sure. But that, I feel like there's been a lot of progress. I've learned so much just by observing. And I'm very encouraged because some of these really subtle truths that I thought were going to be matters of faith, are not. Faith is only necessary to hold you to the study. once you get the study going and you start observing and you start sinking into quiet mind, a lot of this stuff will be handed to you. You know, a lot of these things that the scriptures teach will be self-evident. And this is why we practice. And it's just around the corner. That's the thing that's so crazy about this. You know, 27 years, I have had really no idea how to go forward except just to follow what I was told and to obey and keep going. And then, 27 years into it, I kind of feel like now I know where to start. I've finally gotten enough of the layout of the land and kind of seeing, oh, okay, so that's what's going on. That's the problem. That's how the problem has to be taken care of, right? And so now you get the tools and you start doing it. You start going in and watching. You don't have to do anything but watch. But that watching is fascinating. It's amazing how we are manipulated by body mind constantly. And this is why it's called bondage. And you can see, wow, we really are bound. That the mind really gets caught and we get pulled right in there and we suffer with it the whole time, all of that. So he says it starts and when it ceases, what it wants. Well, how does the desire arise? I find that desires usually arise by something picked out by the senses, the smell of pizza, the feel of, the beauty of the day, a nice breeze. It will somehow, some kind of sense will put you in a space of memory and you'll remember something, that will come up. And that memory then will have a few other things involved in it. If you keep following that narrative, if you get interested in it, slowly the desire develops and defines itself. And once the desire is developed, then it kind of sits there as a fact, right, to you. And then all of the conjuring of a future and how to go about manifesting that desire begins to come into the picture. And you can see, if you keep catching yourself and bringing yourself back to the watcher, you can feel that as the observer, there's a peace, there's a calmness in you. The second that you attach to a thought and get pulled in, that calmness is gone. There's a sense of action, a sense of tension as you pursue a desire. There's this pulling going on inside of you. And if you can become aware of that pulling, you'll realize you're not comfortable. You realize at a very subtle level to have a desire is a negative experience, right? It's a negative experience because it's a feeling of not having or of needing or being hungry. And if you get that, you start getting that feeling, you start paying attention to those very subtle feelings like that, you begin to realize this desire is not serving me. Even though all my life I thought this is what I enjoyed and this is what I wanted, when you've actually gotten to some quiet inside and you see how all the tension that happens in the formation of a desire and then the need for the desire and then the going and grabbing the desire, you really get a sense of slavery, of what it is to be connected to a body mind which are never content and are always looking for something or needing something. And when you get this, he's inviting us to come in and get this awareness, start watching carefully, right? He says,
Swami, I'm sorry.
yes,
I
no
have a
worries.
question. May I ask you a question?
Hmm.
Thanks. So, what about this desire, like for reading scriptures or, I don't know, some sort of not meditation per se, but like, study, like spiritual studies? How do
Yeah.
you?
I think those are great. Those are what kind of fall in the realm of vidya. So they're light, and they will help you to stay toward the boundary of mind. Right? Because if you're studying scripture, you're reading about these things. You're making yourself aware in your mind, and those things, even if in the moment they're not directly relevant to what you're working on, at some point those things, Mother will pull those memories up to help you get out. Right. And so the scriptures that you're studying are the tools and the reminders that Mother's going to pull out of your mind later on as you get closer to the edge, when you start trying to hold that space as witness or as observer. Uh, so anything that is vidya, meaning things that lead you or makes you think of the divine or think of oneness or move toward oneness, all of those things are going to be helpful. They're not the thing itself, right? They're not going to be the answer for you, but they're going to provide you for the tools for allowing for the space within you to open, to be uncovered of noise, uncovered of confusion, uncovered of manipulation. Because that's really the surprising thing to find is the number of ways that body and mind manipulate you to do their bidding in a day, and what a tax it really is, like the effort that really is involved in stepping into body. And
Where do the thoughts arise? Like, you, if you're mindful, you can see like a thought come up, almost like, come out of, nowhere, just appears in your mind. And then it has this magnetic quality to it that, it kind of, it wants you to do whatever it is. Uh, I know that the thoughts don't really belong to us. Where, how do they come? Why they appear, and what's the mystery of the appearance of a thought?
it's the wheel of samsara. That initial imbalance starts this wheel rolling. This wheel of thought, this wheel of desire starts rolling, and with each with I can't say with each revolution, but it works in the metaphor. With each revolution, it's picked up a little bit more mud and traction from what it's rolling over. It picks up weight and it gets heavier and it gets thicker. And so every thought arises out of the previous thought, right? And every thought is directly related to the previous thought. It's impossible to break that chain. And so just becoming aware of that, you through really the way that to become aware of that is, again, to put your emphasis in the process of thinking. There's the thought and the movement and the changing, and then there's you, the observer. The way to manage the mind is that every time that your attention goes to this side, to the changing side, do whatever is necessary to bring that attention back to being witness, to be constantly aware of how the witness is oh boy, if you're fully separated into witness, there's no feeling, there's no sensation, there's no desire. You're in the moment at that point, and that's realization. That's the natural state. But most of us are not in that space, and so in the moment, we're semi trapped in our little tangle of thoughts, our tangle of desires, our tangle of narratives, our if I do this, then this kind of thing. We get a little bit tangled. But with with these practices, with the scripture, with the watching, with the bringing your attention back to this side, that prevents you from going too deep into forgetfulness, to actually going into a state of mind. It prevents you from getting caught in a space where you can't feel your now. All right, because there's a definite feeling to now, isn't there? When you move the sense of the divine within, and the mantra is going in the heart, and you're no longer seeing God as somewhere else. You're kind of experiencing just being there as much as you can. That there's a freedom in that, kind of a letting go in that. And as soon as you step into mind, that letting go becomes a raise of the shoulders in just an almost undetectable level of tension, right? And that's the magnetic thing that you're talking about. That's the stress. If we call it magnetism, it's a very nice word for stress, because your desire is pulling you, but you are here, and that pulling is the dissatisfaction. That pulling is the delusion that something outside of yourself is going to fill you, is going to give you peace. And in that tension, if you can get your mind off of the thoughts, off of the changing part, and put it on the witness part, you'll get back that sense of release, that sense of relaxation that this is causing. And the more that you spend time thinking about this side of the equation rather than the observer, the more and more you get engrossed in this desire, the more and more you cannot let go of it, because it's tantalizing and getting stronger and more powerful. But what you're trying to do is the discontent is actually the thing that's pulling you toward it. Right? And it's only pulling you toward it because you're looking at the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and you're going through the steps, You're seeing that it's beautiful. Oh, I really want that. And then you keep thinking how you want it. You keep thinking about how you could get it and how you've had it in the past and what it was like and how beautiful it was. Right. And that's making you think, oh, I need to have it. Right. And then the action finally comes in at the end and you go and get it. And then sometimes that allows you to get that separation again because the desire has been fulfilled. But nothing has actually been given to you. You know, the desire, desire being fulfilled is an illusion. All that doing fulfilling a desire does is bring you back to that peaceful state of not being pulled into the narrative, not being pulled into mind and body in that sense of lack. Right. And so this is a really important teaching, and Thakur is telling us all the time, but we don't often emphasize it. This discernment is a constant activity. It's a constant ongoing. And I think it's the hardest part initially because it requires so much attention and so much steadiness. But I think the result of it, the fruit of it, as it were, is going to be earning that separation, so that you're not in a constant state of tension with desire or tension with longing or tension with, something going for something outside of yourself, right? Going for something outside of yourself.
Is
So,
this a gradual
Swami,
process?
Oop, just a moment.
Mhm.
Yela, why don't you finish? Then we'll come around to just a moment. Olga?
So, yeah,
Uh-huh.
thank you. Is this a gradual process, or is there like one point, like at one point it's just this kind of you kind of enter into the state and you can abide in it? It's
Yes.
kind of,
Well, we have to remember that the process itself is kind of is us just taking refuge again and again and again. The actual success, the actual realization is going to be grace. And so that can happen at any time. Or you can see that it's grace itself that is allowing you to move in that direction. Um, so far for me, I see it as a gradual, constant effort. But I think at some point it breaks. I think you thin it and thin it and thin it, and then it snaps. And that snap is, your tenacity and your commitment, your earnestness and sincerity are the words Ramakrishna chose. But to remaining in your desire-free zone through observation, that's kind of where we are trying to build our nest. Is just there at the edge of delusion as the observer, and letting Mother just well, I don't know, just allowing Mother to do the work. Because in that whole thing yesterday, a part of what keeps pulling us back into mind is the idea that we can fix it. Is the idea that we can actually do something. And that's what pulls us the wrong direction. When we have any sense of doership that I could, trying to be quiet or trying to reach or trying to think of,
yeah.
any effort on the outside pulls us into it further. That's why really in practice, the only thing we seem to be able to do, if we can do anything, is let go. Right. And so whenever I would find something yesterday that was pulling me into the mind, instead of worrying about it, I would just observe it and then let Mother take care of it. So I would just observe it and let go of it, observe it, let go of it. And it was a constant thing. Once I let go of something, another thought came in that got my attention. I was like, okay, let go of that one. Your Mother, and you do it for a while, you start getting the hang of it and you start enjoying some peace, and you can feel all these things trying to pull you constantly, 10,000 times a minute, and you sit there and it becomes, turn it into a little bit of a game with Mother. Just try and stay in awareness. Keep your mind at this end of the stick, not on the changing end, and just sit there. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, So, Swami,
mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
is the trick to when we become conscious of wanting something or feeling alive, just to tell ourselves that we don't like it and there's no need to desire anything?
You don't have to tell yourself anything. Truth will be self-apparent as you try and calm the situation. So what you're trying to do is just become aware of mind anyway, whether there's a desire or no desire at the moment, whatever. Of course, there's always a desire subtly in there somewhere. But really the exercise is simply being aware. Watch. Be aware of yourself, being aware, and just watch everything that's going on. And from that, you will see desire form. And you'll be like, oh my God, look at that. You'll see the lesson. You'll see it starts as a spark. You get a nice, somebody brushes against your arm, and that makes you remember your mother, and then your mother's no longer around. And so it brings up a sadness, right? And it just, one thing just kind of starts falling down. And if you are like a row of dominoes spreading, and soon everything's falling over and leading you off balance deeper and deeper into the mind. And that's the trouble. It's the desire is just that which leads you deeper into mind. The desire is what is the magnetic field, to use Olga's words, or the tension of your attachment is what pulls you in. It pulls you into the mind. And you can feel that pulling, and you can feel the tension of it, and you can feel the necessity of it, because you'll realize, I'm happy just sitting here. I don't need to be pulled into that. And yet it convinces me that there's something there I want or need. And you go ahead and get pulled into the mind, usually unconsciously. But this is the point. If you can stay aware of what's going on in your inner world, you don't get pulled in. Right? You don't get pulled in, because you start to see, I'm content as I am. I don't need things, even if the body's hungry, even if the body's tired, whatever. There's a space within me that is beyond hunger and tired. There's a space within me that's aware, that's vibrant and aware. And that's the I, or that's me. But in a general sense, when you get pulled into mind, you're always an I, because the mind works in particulars, one thing at a time. Right? He says, after all the yogas, whatever their source and character, have only one aim: to save you from the calamity of separate existence. Right? What is that separate existence? That's you being pulled out of yourself into mind. When you yourself get pulled out of yourself and into mind, you become mind, and God becomes the old space that you used to inhabit in contentment, the zero space, the space of bliss, the space of being. And so all the yogas, whatever their source and character, have one aim, and that's to save you from this calamity of separate existence, being pulled out of self, of being a meaningless dot in a vast and beautiful picture, right? A constantly changing dream that doesn't mean anything, right? It's just simply a constant emanation from divine existence. But there's nothing outside of you that you need. And so you have to come back to the inner space. He says, you suffer because you've alienated yourself from reality. And now you seek an escape from this alienation. That's what most of your desires really are. So you see here, it's very important here. Look, you suffer because you've alienated yourself from reality. Your reality is the I am. Your isness, silent mind, where you're in the moment in ecstasy because you're in perfect contentment, right? And then these thoughts, these desires, and the attract us into mind with a story, with beauty, with change, with a narrative, with a what if, or if I have, blah, 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 right? Gets us interested in that, pulls us in. And what's happening? We're being separated from our isness. We're being separated from our immortal self and pulled into the idea of self, which is operating in the mind, where all desire is, and where all change is, and where nothing can be whole, right? Because the mind is a relative tool. So it needs two to function. It needs at least two, the subject object, but it also needs the relationship between them. So you get pulled in. And this is what he's calling that calamity of separate existence, of being a meaningless dot, right? An ego, which is just a dot. A dot really has no mass to it, right? A dot is infinitely small. And so you become a dot, a meaningless dot, right? Because you've lost your nature. You've forgotten your nature. So you don't know what gives value. You don't know what gives meaning anymore. Now it's just a matter of egoism assigning value. And so now things that have no value take on great value like a big chunk of gold. It has absolutely no value to the self whatsoever. But to this meaningless dot lost in the world of thought, that's going to mean a great deal, because that's going to give me access to more desires, right? To more things. And so you suffer from that. Why are you suffering? Because you're not established in your true nature. Satchitananda is sitting here, but you are caught in lust, greed, and fame instead of the Satchitananda. You've separated yourself from your reality, and now you seek an escape from this alienation. That's all of your desires that try and give you a moment of happiness, try and give you a moment of contentment, because you're in that sense, you're in that constant state of tension of this unnatural thing of desiring. And you've stepped out of your nature of self, so you're pulled toward it and being pulled deeper and deeper into this space. He says, and now once you're in that space, you're lost, you're kind of separated from yourself. You feel all of your discontentments, because desire never completes you. It never fills you up. And you can't find your way back to the silence, because you're still looking for how to get there, right? Thinking that you're going to do it. And instead of withdrawing, you're diving deeper and deeper and deeper into mind, trying to find something that will give you some peace. And in this world of change, the only thing that gives peace is distraction, right? And it gives a false sense of peace, because it doesn't establish you in peace. It keeps you distracted from your lack of peace. And when you're in that state, that's good enough. You blame it on desires, and that's what keeps you over there. But once you get back to yourself, once, as through being the observer, you neti your way back to a center, then you realize, wow, all desire causes more desire. The experience of desire is tension, stress, anxiety. And to go after that desire causes weariness, fatigue, sense of loss. And so we want to watch all of this so that it becomes clear to us. And then we naturally want to do the right thing, because we're not being deluded by the false nature of desire anymore. And we're beginning to experience this peace that passes understanding, right? A peace that doesn't come from understanding. It comes from being, right? And so we begin to experience that. He says, you cannot escape from your own obsessions. You can only cease nursing them. And that's what the observation does. Cease feeding them, right? I know so many things. Like with coffee, they'll pick something I can talk about. You pick that idea of coffee. I gave up coffee, I don't know, 3 weeks ago now. And although anyway, that's a side story. 3 weeks ago. And the thing is as long as I keep coffee out of the mind, it's not difficult at all, because the thought's not even there. So I just don't have a cup of coffee. But keeping that thought of cup of coffee out of the mind is the difficult part, right? Because I keep thinking of how nice that would be, how much I'd love to be able to just take a nice sip of my latte right now, right? I remember what a nice thing that was to sit there in the morning and to read your book and to have a sip of that coffee and keep going. And as long as you keep replaying that from any number of different angles, you're suffering, right? You're suffering because you really feel like you want it. And that desire is being nurtured because you're thinking about the taste, and you're thinking about the warmth, you're thinking about the milk and the sugar and whatnot. As long as you are not disciplined enough to look at the mind and say, stop, we're not having coffee, and you make it an absolute statement, that thought of coffee will disappear and you're back to your center. But if you don't mean it, if you say, stop, right? But you're not, stop. You see the difference? You're whining like a victim, stop, all right? But not because you've completely renounced. When you completely renounce, it's not stop like a victim, it's stop. You belong to me. The mind belongs to me, right? And then you gather that discipline. And as soon as you can say stop and mean it, you've taken a great step forward. And we keep practicing that, right? That stop is that neti. Stop. Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that would be related to the development of the will, like renunciation is like a will. You can make big renunciation, but you can start with a small one and just.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's what austerity is. Tapasya is training your will. That's why people take a cold shower. It's like it's to practice not having your desires, your body's desire for warm water, not having that control you. It's learning how to say that no, and being able to stand in the shower. And you'll find if you take a cold shower, if you sit there thinking about it being cold and you kind of resist the cold, like, oh, I got to hurry up and get out of here so it's not cold. If you stop resisting and let the water go through you, let that cold go through you, just accept it, you'll find that you don't suffer nearly as much and it doesn't become such a thing. So yes, it's gradual, and we definitely need to do practices to train our willpower. That's why we get up early. That's why we, whatever it is, fast. It's part of in our dedication to our practice too. No, you can't play one more game of solitaire. You're going to sit down and do your practice now. Right? So you get up and do it. It's practicing getting out of bed at the time, and you sit there and you're like, oh, 5 more minutes. No, not 5 more minutes. You get up right now. Or overcoming laziness. We have a task that needs to be done, and we just sit there thinking of other things to do. You say, stop it. Go take the trash out. Right. So it's exercising our willpower. It's really what, basically, in a fundamental way, one of the services of tapasya and austerity are for that. To exercise yourself, to learn how to separate yourself from your desire, and to show you that your desire does not have any real power over you. You are the one giving it all the power that holds you. And you begin to get that awareness. And that's through just observation, because it's truth. And you can observe truth. So you go inside. And then you have to stop nursing these desires in all of the insincere ways that you've said no, right? It is because the I am is false that it wants to continue. Reality need not continue. Knowing itself indestructible, it is indifferent to the destruction of forms and expressions. To strengthen and stabilize the I am, we do all sorts of things, all of them in vain. For the I am is being built from moment to moment. It is an unceasing work. And the only radical solution is to dissolve the separative sense of I am such and such a person once and for good. Being remains, but not self-being, right? That means be. Don't be yourself, right? Just be. Being involves no thought, requires no thought. If thought is necessary, it arises, but it's not a state of thinking. Being is being. And anything that happens in being happens as an inspiration and not as a reaching. Right? A very different experience of being.
But so I'm sorry, but you have to still, like, say example, it's very hard to actually distinguish. Sometimes the inspiration, but if the inspiration arises, right, you still have to act upon it. You have to.
You will act, but it will not be an I acting. You see the difference? If it's a thought, if it's a series of time-space causation, it'll be, I'm going to do something, I'm going to get something, I'm going to acquire something. That's normally, when we're in ego space, all desire is done by being out of balance. Like we walk. The way that walk is actually a controlled fall. You lean the body forward so that it falls off balance, and you continually put a foot forward to catch that balance. And that's how you move. That's how you walk, right? And so what happens in ego state in the mind, you go out of balance, a desire is formed. You lean forward and you go. You start doing the walk toward that desire. With the inspiration, there isn't that out of balance. You're not trying to maintain a center. It's coming out of your center. Right? It's coming naturally, spontaneously to you. You're not in pursuit of something. You are acting out of your nature, out of love or out of wisdom through your being. but you're not trying to acquire or even fix. It's an expression.
Thank you. Bless you.
Boy, there's at least 3 more in there. Let's see. So our questioner says, I have definite spiritual ambitions. Oof. Must I not work for their fulfillment? All right. This is a great question. This is what Suzuki deals with very strongly in that first chapter in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He says, if you practice to acquire or to attain, you're not practicing purely. You're not practicing rightly. So Maharaj says, no ambition is spiritual. Right? So his sentence, see, this is why we get a guru, because this guy is caught in his world already, so his questions are even tainted. So he says, I have definite spiritual ambitions. And then the Maharaj says, no ambition is spiritual, right? You're caught already. So don't define your non-spiritual problem as a spiritual problem. It's a non-spiritual problem. No ambition is spiritual, right? Because ambition comes from only a sense of lack, right? If I become better, I'll get more. I'll be better. I'll be whole. I'll be happy. I'll be full, whatever it is. I'll be secure. All ambitions are for the sake of the I am, right? The sense of the ego. I am as a being, as a self, a named self. If you want to make real progress, you must give up all ideas of personal attainment, right? Because you and your true nature are not a particular. Only ego is a particular, and that ego doesn't exist, and so it's constantly trying to acquire evidence that it is real. Right? That it is strong, it is handsome, it is young, it is immortal, it is worthwhile. Right? If you want to make real progress, you must give up all ideas of personal attainment. The ambitions of so-called yogis are preposterous. A man's desire for a woman is innocence itself compared to the lusting for an everlasting personal bliss. The mind is a cheat. The more pious it seems, the worse the betrayal. Wow, 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 wow. Wow. That's crazy. That's something. No ambition is spiritual, obviously, right? Because it's a lack of balance. It's a reaching or a grabbing. All ambitions are for the sake of the I am, the individual self. Right? All ambitions are this self, this small self, trying to convince the world that it exists, that it's meaningful, and that it has all the qualities of its intuitive divine self. If you want to make real progress, you must give up all ideas of personal attainment, right? Or another way of saying that is to relax into your contentment. That's what he's talking about right there. Give up all ideas of personal attainment. Understand there's nothing to attain. That the material is not real. Anything outside of yourself is just changing and unreal. You must give up all ideas of personal attainment, the ambitions of so-called yogis, right? So if you have ambitions within spiritual life, you want to become a megachurch preacher, or you want to be the most respected devotee at the center, or whatever it is. If your spiritual life is a source of desire of something outside of yourself, and rather than a return to your natural state, he says the ambitions of the so-called yogis, they're preposterous. You've put your foot in 2 boats on purpose, and those boats are going different directions. One's going out into the world, and the other one's looking for the dock of realization inside, standing on the dock, right? So so he says the ambitions of the yogis are preposterous. He says a man's desire for a woman, so for a non-yogi, right, the sex desire, he says it's innocence itself compared to the lusting for an everlasting personal bliss, right? He's saying that it's better to desire for a man to desire a woman, or a woman to desire a man, or however those arrangements are. He said that's innocence compared to someone who takes some gem of spiritual life, lobs it into the future somewhere, and then goes pursuing it through spiritual life. He said, at least one is right here, at least one you can go see that it doesn't exist, that it can't give you what you want. The other one is just going to be this elusive thing that lays off in the future. I'm going to become a great yogi. I'm going to become the best Swami. I'm going to establish a new whatever, all these things. He says
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I keep
no,
interrupting you
no, it's
today.
good.
Thank you. I think he's talking about spiritual personal bliss, not like a hierarchy ambition to be like become somebody within the order, or be the best. But I think he's talking even the desire for personal enlightenment is also selfish. Isn't that what
Yes,
he's talking about?
yes. I also was talking about that. I'm sorry that wasn't clear. But yes, anything that you take out of yourself and leave a hole and then put it outside of yourself to go get is materialism, even if it's spiritual. Even by thinking that your enlightenment lays off in the future somewhere and you're going to do until you get it, that's just earning and buying, just like anything else in the world is earning and buying, right? So the difference is that we know that we are that. We are enlightened. It is not an acquisition. It's a letting go of all of these other things that are distracting us so that we can realize, we can become aware of this subtle contentment that has always been ours, the subtle bliss of being that has always been ours. But as long as you think you're the mind, you have no awareness of what you are. You're running after the things, the definitions of the ego, not the definitions of self, right? And the definitions of ego are constantly changing and splitting and multiplying and disappearing and coming back again. And it's an endless search. And that's why he says, if you have something that's purely abstract, like realization, and you've placed it into some unknown future and you go running after it, you don't know what you're running after, first of all. So how are you not going to know when you find it? You don't know how to get there. And actually, it's been told to you, you can't get there by a cause. It comes only through grace, right? And grace comes when you're able to accept it. You're only able to accept it when you're not chasing anything that you're doing anymore. When you just sit back in that quiet self and you accept the presence of God. That's the highest grace. You accept.
Swami,
Yes.
what about the desire to be of service to others?
Well, where's that desire coming from? Is it a desire to worship the divine in others? Or are you trying to accomplish something through service of others?
Accomplish, what would that be? I'm not sure how to answer you.
Yeah. Well, to be, if you are the doer in your service of others, right, that is going to be your problem. Because anytime that you have a sense of doership, whatever you're doing is adding to your sense of egoship, your sense of doing. The other way of service is through the renunciation of self and touching that inspiration within you and knowing that, just like that yogi who keeps picking the scorpion out of the water, the scorpion's nature is to sting, my nature is to alleviate suffering. So if you're doing good to others, quote, almost unconsciously, simply because it's your nature to alleviate suffering, that doesn't build ego. That's done as worship, because you see it as the God within you, the divine within you, as expressing itself, right? And so you sit there, and not through a sense of agency, but through a sense of being true to yourself, you relieve suffering. But if you go out in order to relieve suffering on others, not because of it's your nature, because you're doing something spiritual or you're doing something good to people, it will have the look of something positive, but it's also an undoing of something positive within you. Because if you help somebody with the sense of helping them, and you do that continuously, that person's resentment is going to grow, because you're always above them tossing something down to them. So their resentment is going to grow. And your sense of ego in that operation is going to grow, because as they stop appreciating you because they're starting to resent you, then you're going to start getting angry, right? And eventually you're going to stop serving them because they didn't appreciate you. And boom, you're in a mess. Egoism was born. Egoism manifested from that effort. And so it was not successful, right? So it's not so much that you're helping people, it's why are you helping them? You know, are you doing it because it's your nature and you're not calculating any end result, and you're not trying to get something from it, no result from it? Then it's spiritual. It will take you home. If it's a doing, it may take you a step closer to the mother, but you've got 20 steps to go. And so there's still going to be suffering in it. There's impurity in it. And you're going to have to struggle with that and work through it. That suffering is there to make you aware of it. So if you're watching, you're paying attention, you'll see, oh, no, that doesn't feel right initially. I desired to help that person because I have an idea of myself as a nice person. So I was trying to be a nice person. See how I'm trying to be something rather than, someone's suffering, oh, and you just run and help them without a reason, because it's who you are. It's what you do, like that. He says the mind is a cheat, right? The impure mind, the mind of me and mine, is always trying to trick you into its desires. Oh, it's not so bad. Oh, just one more time isn't a big deal. You know, oh, you've been so good for 2 weeks, right? Think of all the ways if you try and fast for a day. Watch your mind. How many ways it tries to make you think that it's not a big deal for you just to have a cracker. You know, oh, I can just squeeze a little lemon into that water. That's not a violation. Right? It'll start small. And by the end of the day, you're squeezing a whole angel food cake into that water. Right? All right. The mind is a cheat. The more pious it seems, right, the worse the betrayal, right? So the more the mind convinces you that something's okay, right, the more pious that something might be, the worse the betrayal. You're buying hook, line, and sinker, right? No. Don't buy the mind. Don't listen to mind. All of your teaching comes from heart, comes from presence, comes from Satchitananda, right? If it's okay, you know it's okay. At the very beginning, you know. If you have to be convinced that something's okay, you're on treacherous soil. Right? So this is why we want to be aware inside, because it's easy if you're aware. If you catch it at the beginning, that thought, that desire is barely a spark. You can snub it out just by looking at it. But if you're not aware, that spark becomes a fire, becomes a forest fire, and then you have to try and put it out and forget it at that point. So that's why this discernment's so very, very, very important for us. Right? The questioner says, well, people come to you very often with their worldly troubles and ask for help. How do you know what to tell them? Maharaj, I just tell them what comes to my mind at the moment, right? That's what it is to be in presence. I just speak what comes to my mind, because there's no ego that's got me off balance, that's causing me to think about how to say what is right or what sounds good or what is going to be helpful. I just tell them from the source what arises in my mind, right? That's what he's saying. I just tell them what comes to my mind at the moment. I have no standardized procedure in dealing with people, right? It's not of mind for him. It's not of egoism. There's no calculation. He listens to what you're saying intently, and he knows what is, and when the answer comes, it comes naturally, spontaneously from within, because he's being self and not ego self. Ego self always has a process, always has a now, the accomplishment and attainment, right? It's always got a 3-step process to it. Questioner, well, you're sure of yourself, but when people come to me for advice, how am I to be sure that my advice is right? You see, he's living as ego self. That is exactly the nature of ego self. It is never sure. It is never stable. It is never confident, right? It's always shaky in there. Maharaj, watch in what state you are, right? Do you know where you are? Are you in the state of silence or are you engaged in a story? Are you in the state of contentment or are you off balance and reaching for something? Become aware of these states. This is that discernment will show you what he's talking about inside. You'll become firsthand knowledgeable. Watch in what state you are, from what level you're talking. If you talk from the mind, you may be wrong. If you talk from full insight into the situation with your own mental habits in abeyance, your advice may be a true response. The main point is to be fully aware that neither you nor the man in front of you are mere bodies. If your awareness is clear and full, a mistake is less probable. A mistake is less probable, right? So we'll stop there for the day.